You're listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast with Ken Lucci of Driving Transactions and James Blaine of PAX Training. Learn how you can build a thriving transportation business with real profits, repeat clients, and enterprise value. And now for your hosts, Ken and James.
Well, good afternoon, audience, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast. My name is Ken Lucci from Driving Transactions. We're a financial analysis, business valuation, and M&A advisory firm. And I am joined by my partner in crime, who I've missed terribly, who is the road-weary James Blaine.
Road-weary road warrior. Hello.
From PAX Training, the best driver training program in the chauffeur industry and the motorcoach industry. Is there even another one that comes close?
No, not that comes to mind. So. No, and we're slowly expanding to all of passenger transportation. So if you drive passengers for a living, we're going to have training for you.
Yeah, and here's the key. It's the reason why he's road weary. He's on the road hither and yon every single week. We can't catch him here. Unfortunately, you know, the poor audience is the one that has a problem because they have to listen to my nonsense constantly alone. They tune in and they're like, wait a minute, we want to see James. Why is this? Anyway.
They will have better financials for it. So pay attention, people.
There you go. So today we're hitting upon a subject that is near and dear to both of us. And I think that the industry has small business in general, but our industry has a serious issue with business owners working in their business and not, quote, on their business and being overall reactive. And today we're going to talk about proactivity, and we're going to nail proactivity based on three subject matter, three pieces of your business that are critical: safety, business development, and financial planning. So, James, tell me in your mind, when I say proactive safety, what does it mean to you as far as what an operator should be doing to be on safety proactively? What does it mean?
So look, the biggest thing that I see, and it's going to show up in all three of these sections, is that we tend to have this mentality that none of this is special. This is stuff we've done forever. This is stuff we know how to do. This is stuff the people we're hiring know how to do. This is no big deal, right? I see it all the time. Hey, this guy's been driving, 20 years or 30 years, or hey, sure. I only hire experienced drivers, right? I don't have to worry about training my drivers because I only hire experienced drivers, right?
Right. Now, or this driver hasn't had an accident in 10 years. You know what that tells me?
Yeah.
He's due.
Yeah.
He's overdue.
And here's the funny part about that, right? It's kind of like saying, I'm going to hire, and you tell me whether this makes sense, right? I think of it as like, I'm not going to go hire somebody to manage my finances that's been doing it forever and not knowing anything about his background or anything else. He's just been doing it forever, right? And I say this all the time, how many people have been doing their job forever and still suck at it? Right.
Right. And sometimes you are correct, because I call it it's the single box mentality. Every single day they open up the same box, and that is their point of reference for everything they do. And sometimes muscle memory, especially in our industry, habits are a bad thing when the world around you is changing. Right. And we can all agree that one of the top three issues in this industry is fleet insurance. Yep. And you cannot be treating your safety the same way as you always have if you want to stay in business, because the fleet insurance companies at this point are taking no prisoners, doing no favors, and I don't blame them. They're losing money. So what does proactive safety plan mean to you?
Okay, so I'm going to give a very unpopular opinion, right? Don't cancel me for this.
By the way, you look like you do look like shit, but keep going.
I could use a nap. I saw that road travel.
You could, but that'll be at the end of the day today. So keep going.
It's all right. I'll rest when I'm dead. I'm too busy helping operators to sleep. Look,
good idea.
Unpopular opinion here. everybody says there's an insurance crisis, there's a crisis on this, there's a crisis on that. But I can tell you, I've spent the last 10 years of my career preaching and telling anyone that would listen, hey, we've got to get in front of accidents. We've got to get in front of incidents. You've got to understand, right? The number one thing I see in companies is, well, we don't have any accidents. We don't have any problems. We can scale back our training program. Well, okay. So hold on. So you're saying because you're winning, right? You've got a winning team. My coach is going to have them do less practice because we're winning anyway. Like, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. It's like it's a bad analogy maybe, but it's like the Secret Service saying, you know what, we haven't had any attempts on the president's life, so therefore we're going to stop the mandate.
We're going to scale it back.
We're going to stop the mandatory re-upping of firearms training. Close quarter firearms training. We're going to stop that because we haven't had anybody that's threatened the president that way. It's ridiculous. Or police department saying, you know, crime has really, really, really been down. Let's fire that crime prevention officer and stop that entire program.
Well, and here's the other thing, right? If you want to go down that same road, I mentioned I only hire people with experience. Well, great. What do you know about the training program of the company they work for?
Sure.
What do you know about their day-to-day at the company they work for?
Well, you're also hiring their bad habits. Agreed?
100%. You're hiring their bad habits. You're hiring everything that came with them. One of the things that for me is huge is if you're going to get ahead of something, the only way to get ahead of something is to do it now before it's a problem later. So, you think about it, and one of my favorite examples is and I hear people all the time with their training programs. Look, if you had a heart attack, right? You had a heart attack. You're like, oh man, I had a heart attack. You go and they say you got a bad heart. And you say, no big deal. I bought a new Apple Watch because the new Apple Watch will send all of the data for my next heart attack to the doctor instead of fixing your diet, changing your behavior, trying to get healthy, right?
Really good analogy, by the way.
Well, but think about it. We see it all the time. You got to treat it like your health. And what's really funny is we have a lot of close calls, especially in businesses, where it's a close call. And I talk about something called the 72-hour rule. And if you want to learn about proactivity, human psychology, and human nature, the 72-hour rule applies to practically everything that you're going to deal with. And it goes a little something like this. Hour 0 is some kind of close call, near miss, accident, crisis, something really bad that is kind of like a wake up type moment happens. At that point, for the next 24 hours, you're typically in like crisis mode. I got to handle that immediate problem. Now, what happens directly around that once we kind of pass that 24 hours? Okay, how do I keep it from happening again? Whose fault was it? How do I take care of it? How do I get ahead of it? That's typically when a company like ours gets a phone call. Hey, we had a guy with an SUV at the airport and the passenger swung the back door open and got ripped off because the chauffeur didn't put his hand on the door and hold it closed. Hey,
they disembarked on the wrong side.
Right. They got off on the wrong side. Hey, I had one of the guys who's driving my brand new motorcoach. He didn't get out and look and he couldn't see it on the camera and he backed into a car or he turned through a curb and hit a bollard, right? It's always the simple things. And then what happens? Once they hit that point, you have 72 hours to make one of two things happen. Okay. At the 72-hour point, it's going to be done. If you haven't made the decision, your decision becomes indecision. Now, your brain can't live with indecision. Right, no change. But your brain can't live with that, right? We don't like the idea of, I didn't do anything. So we BS ourselves. We lie to ourselves. We make it, we were overdue. It wasn't that bad. That's the first time he's ever had it. Right? You lie yourself. Because it's easier than making a change.
The word is rationalizing.
It's 100% rationalizing, right? So you're rationalizing this problem away. Now, here's what's funny, and here's why I bring it up. In our world, we call that the 72-hour rule. If you look at an unpaid bill from someone, right? Let's say you have your A&R. I'm sure you'll appreciate this. Once your A&R gets to 30, right? Once you get to 90, your chances of getting paid drop. Once you get to 120, they drop even further. And the
Right.
further out you go, it starts
Right.
kind of hockey stick in the wrong direction, straight down
Right.
until your chances of getting paid are zero.
So your point is when something happens, you have the opportunity to turn it into a teachable moment and change so that you can make sure that that behavior doesn't happen again. Okay. Or you could do nothing and you've done really at some point, you didn't do anything to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I bet you it actually increases your chances of a repeat performance of the same issue.
And what's crazy about this, Ken, is it's actually worse than that. Because typically what happens is we don't get proactive. We're not doing what we should be doing to prevent an accident or a service failure or any kind of other issue in the business, right? And 9 times out of 10, it's a human training error, right?
Absolutely.
And look, even if you say, oh my gosh, we had a freak accident. The wheel fell off the vehicle, right? The wheel just fell right off the vehicle.
No, it's either process or human issue.
Right. I guarantee
Process
you.
problem, human issue.
Yeah. You go look at all of the accidents that very, very few of them are freak issues, right? It's, well, we went back and we looked at the maintenance. They weren't doing maintenance. Well, we had a service failure here. Well, we went back and this person didn't know where they were going, right? They went to the wrong place. They weren't paying attention. They weren't following. So what happens is we have these failures to get ahead of things. We have these wake up moments, these 72-hour rule moments. And if you don't make an active, meaningful change and get back on track, eventually what happens is you start seeing these cascading type issues where it gets bigger and bigger. And a lot of times, especially in our world, it can go from 0 to 100 real quick. You might have a bunch of little incidents because, I'll give you a great example. You have someone that follows too closely. That's their thing. They follow too closely. And for a time, they have a couple close calls. They get lucky. And then they're following too closely on a tanker truck and a squirrel runs in the road and the guy slams on the brakes and the luck runs out.
It's always those squirrels.
It's always. They're nuts.
But back up a step. Because you made a really good point there that everybody in the audience should understand. That was not a flippant analogy.
No, this is a real world. I see it all the time.
Right. The Apple Watch in relationship to preventing the heart attack is the same thing as the telematics system as it is preventing an accident. The Apple Watch does shit for you if you don't change the behavior.
Correct.
That the Apple Watch tells you something wrong and you don't address it. The same with telematics. If all you do is check off the box, I have telematics, therefore I'm safer. I have an Apple Watch, therefore I'm healthier. It's wrong thinking. Yeah. And I know that's operators are like, I don't know what your problem is. I have telematics. Well, you're not looking at it. You're not doing anything. Your analogy of the following too close, okay? That's behavior that would be picked up by the telematics system, and you should be addressing it before the squirrel runs in front of the tanker and causes a pileup.
Well, and what's funny, right? I'd love to say, hey, I'm in marketing. I'm the fun, sugary candy you get to eat. My world.
By the way,
right?
I've never thought of you that way. But
yeah,
keep going.
No, that's not me. But no, you think about it. The training really is. It's kind of like the gym. It's kind of like the working out. You should do it. A lot of times, just like your New Year's resolution, man, we're going to fix our training. We're going to fix this.
Okay.
We're going to do that.
That's another analogy. You are the personal. Wait a minute. PAX is the personal trainer answer to getting healthy.
It is.
How many people join the gym and they never go? They have every intention of creating a workout regimen, okay? And they don't, right? Personal trainer, back in the day when I had really, really solid pectorals, I had a personal trainer way back when. But I could not have achieved the level that I had of my health without him. And to me, for every company out there that says, yeah, we have our own in-house training, you know what I say to that? Again, you're basing your training based solely on what happens in your market, in this box, in your company, whereas somebody like a PAX is taking it all in from the entire industry. All right, so proactive safety.
Well, no, we gotta stay on this for a second, right? Because
Yes.
your analogy, man, there's so many facets to it that we could bring in here, and I think it's probably the easiest way to explain this, right? Plus, I want to see pictures of the six pack abs and the pecs, but
I didn't say
we'll
six
get
pack
back
abs.
to that.
I said really nice pecs.
Okay, well, I want to see the really nice pecs.
When I had a six pack, it was because I was kayaking every day down in Florida. But I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah. So look, I brought that up for two reasons, right? The first is a lot of times what happens, right? You go through a divorce, you go through a breakup, you go through whatever. Man, I got to get sexy again. I'm going to hit the gym, and you crank on it. And then what happens? You kind of taper off, right? We see the same thing in our world. Well, we had an accident, we had an incident. We get real serious about it. We we're going to get it all taken care of. We're going to really focus on our training program, and then it tapers off, right? We got to get someone on the road faster.
But what you're saying is proactivity is all about consistency.
It is. It's 100% about consistency. It's about the reps. It's about doing it right. And to the point you made about a personal trainer, right? And I'll be completely transparent. Other than creating your own platform to do it, there's nothing about what we're training or doing that you can't go put together yourself. The difference, and you've already nailed it, is one, this is what we do. I live on the road. I live with my customers. I eat, sleep, breathe this. This is my world.
And the input data and the program is based on the touch points that happen around the country and the experiences around the country, not just your specific company. And it's tailored to, every facet of what could go wrong in the space, not just in your market, not just your specific vehicles. I mean, it's funny. Some people think of PAX as chauffeur etiquette training. I'm like, dude, you have no idea. It is so much. It's so much more than that. It's like when someone says, well, what you do is format a P&L. Look, what we do is
it's
we
not
teach
an Excel
you
spreadsheet.
Right. We teach you how to format it and how to read it and what's important about it. And when you're not profitable, what's wrong with it. So the depth of safety training, let's just the basic elements. Do you think you can't really have a decent safety program and be proactive about it without it managing a telematics system, correct?
Well, I think what you're talking about, right, let's stick with that health analogy. If you're going to the gym, right, you can go to the gym, you can work out, you can, figure out machines, you can do it all on your own. That's what they used to do. But I can tell you right now, there's not a pro athlete in his right mind who isn't wearing an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, all the tracking equipment, has a personal trainer. If you want to get the most, you have to go down those roads.
It rang home to me to have somebody like a PAX to me is equivalent to when and to have somebody like what we do is the equivalent to when I used to drive Derek Jeter to batting practice in the morning, and the hitting coach used to meet him there. And I'm like, Cap, you need a pitching coach? He's like, Ken, I'm telling you right now, you cannot play this game without continuous coaching, and you have to be able to be coachable. There is not anybody, and when I see players, new players or seasoned players, I say to them, you need to play this game and you need to hone your skills every day like it was the last game of the World Series, along with the first game you ever played. So proactivity is consistency. Proactivity to me is also best practices.
Agreed. And I think the biggest thing, I'm going to give I've probably given this on the podcast before, but I'll give this quote. When I was a kid, my dad told me that you don't go to college to learn what you're going to do at your job, right? A doctor is not going to medical school to learn every scenario, everything, right? They're going to get on the job training. They're going to see case what they're going to learn the mindset and the way that doctors think. An engineer is not going to engineering school to learn how to engineer stuff. They're learning how to think and apply and solve problems in the same way as an engineer.
Right.
I would tell you that when it comes to being proactive, you have to learn how to have a proactive mindset. For me, my thing, A proactive mindset is where you're trying to get ahead of issues and solve problems before they happen, whether that be your financials, whether that's your marketing, whether that's your safety, business development. It doesn't matter. As we progress this conversation, you're going to see this bleed over into all of it. But most importantly, I think the difference between being proactive and trying to get ahead, because I do think they're different, right? Being proactive and trying to get ahead are completely different. And that someone who is proactive is typically someone who is being intentional. I can try to work ahead. I can try and get, ahead of myself. That's not being proactive. Proactive is I'm intentionally saying, hey, I know that I have to do this now to make things easier later.
I agree. I agree. And when I think of proactivity, I think of planning, right?
Yeah.
But let's just make it simple for everybody out there. Proactivity, at its basis, if you accept the premise that most business people are reactive, they're reacting to situations that are occurring. I think the basic starting point is don't let the issue happen again.
Right.
Okay. So
understand the 72-hour rule. Don't be the one that sweeps it under the rug.
So a couple of things. You have to put the foundational elements of a safety program together. You have to have the safety manual, the telematics, the ongoing training, and you have to manage the data and manage what you see. Okay. And constantly reinforce. That's the consistency piece. I have a client who I really like. I like all my clients, so they wouldn't be my clients. And
but this one more than the others.
A couple of people who are no longer my clients because I just didn't like them, right? But and I don't lose many clients. But when a client is not listening, you can almost tell it. I stop talking and I really stop engaging with them proactively. Okay. Yeah. And this one particular client is stuck. And he's stuck in many ways in his business. And I say to him, you've talked to me several times about things that are going wrong out in the field with the vehicles. And my feeling with this is if it happens once, it's your fault that it happened a second time.
Yep.
Okay. So that's safety. My other pet peeve about proactivity is this has been 2025 has been a different year than 22, 23, and 24, right? 22 coming out of the pandemic, everybody was on a sugar high, raising their rates, right? I think 23 was a really, really strong year because people raised their rates in 22, and they had the teams back together in 23 and got their stuff. But I have to tell you, the sentiment in 25 is a little bit different.
Oh, it's completely different.
It's completely different. As I prepare for the state of the industry, we're pulling our data, and there's a lot of companies out there that are flat. Okay. When you look at the overall travel feeders, the airlines, the corporate travel, the group and meeting industry, the cruise industry, the private jet industry, all of those industries are up. Now, with a couple of caveats. Summer's tourist season was down, okay?
True.
Because of the tariffs and, whatever, geopolitical. But overall, corporate travel and airline travel is up. So, you know how I am, and I troll Facebook, and I shake my head when I listen. I see operators, is business flat for everybody? And I've come up with a phrase that it's not your market, it's your mindset. And proactivity, we just touched upon it a little bit with safety, but proactivity, I want to talk about business development, okay? Because, it seems like you've been on the road nonstop.
Fair statement.
Doing business development, okay? And in our own businesses, when we get into any kind of a lull, which doesn't happen anymore, when we were getting into a lull, it's because we didn't have consistent business development going on. We would take on engagements, we would be immersed in the engagements, and we would stop our marketing. This was before we had John. So I want to talk to the operators out there that say, this is an extremely tough year. No, it's not. Okay. What I would challenge every operator is to answer the question for themselves is, have you increased your proactivity on both sales and marketing? Oh, I've upped my Google Ads budget.
Oh, geez,
No,
here we go.
no, don't get me on that soapbox, right? Don't get me started on that. So when I think of business development and proactivity, what does it mean to you? Because I mean, you've been out there kicking ass at these associations. What does proactive sales and marketing mean to you?
So I will tell you, for me, a lot of that came from my time they were actually now in a council in ABA, but back then we were just a group and it was called the Driving Force. And the whole idea was the Driving Force was this is kind of circa 2020. We're trying to help operators with recruiting, with hiring, with that piece. And we developed an entire freaking manual. Like it literally was a guide that was all of the amazing ways that you could hire and train and get people up and get people going and get them excited and recruit them in, and it was, you want to talk about an all-star team, right? I had the least amount of experience out of anyone on this group. We've got Brett Maitland, we've got, Adam Hall, Aaron was running it. I've got Pam Martinez from DATCO, Mike McDonald. We've got this all-star team. And
But tee it up. This is during the pandemic or after?
this is coming out of the pandemic, right?
Right. And you had to be proactive hiring
You
people.
had to be proactive. You had to try new things. You had to go out on a limb. You're trying to get your driver force back. You're trying to get new drivers. And I got to tell you, the things that we would hear is hiring stuff. You don't understand hiring stuff. Do you know what percentage of the people that we would hear that from actually used all these resources, right? We've got probably a couple 100 years of experience on that group. Literally a couple 100 years probably of experience between everyone on that committee. And we've put together this guide and people are doing the same things over and over and over, and they're not trying new things. And hold on, but here's where I want to bring it back to something you said earlier. They're rationalizing it. They're doing the same things as they were before. They aren't working, and they're rationalizing it with, well, it's just a hard, and this is what you were talking about a second ago. Well, it's just a hard market. Well, the mindset is, I don't need to change. It's not me, it's the environment.
Well, and I have a famous saying. I used it at a 20 group with some of the most profitable companies in the industry. I was invited, one of them is the head of a global network, and the others, every single one of them is over 20 million. Well, most of them over 20 million. And I said, to some extent, I like to talk to people who are not profitable because they listen better. And they said, that's kind of insulting, Ken. I'm like, look, you're extremely successful. The problem with people who are successful is omniscient thinking, where they think they're the smartest person in the room and they don't ask for help. And second of all, they also think, and some of them don't listen to the advice when they get it, you're so successful that you think that tomorrow is going to be like today and yesterday. And I think that that's the key to proactivity in business development, is just because it worked last year, just because it worked last month, just because it worked for you for your entire career, it does not mean that it's going to work tomorrow. There was a time where direct mail was fantastic. Then it went out of favor because of email. Well, now it's back. Okay. So, and Arthur Messina from Creative Card talked about that on the episode. But as far as sales and marketing, BD, so you hit upon something, you did it on the hiring project that you have. But as far as, to me, on proactive sales and marketing, it's the same thing with safety. It's about consistency. Okay. It's about, as far as I'm concerned, in sales and marketing, not only is it consistency when you start something, see it through. It's about measurement of everything that you do. But more than anything, proactive as far as sales and marketing, to me, is not being afraid to try new things and not being afraid. In my estimation, the biggest issue is it's a much tougher market in any business to appear above the noise. So I think the secret to proactive sales and marketing in our space, as far as I'm concerned, starts with 2x or 3x the amount of marketing you're doing. And I do not mean triple your Google Ads budget. I mean, try 2 or 3 different types of different things, okay, to go out there and reach your target audiences, okay, but do more than what you traditionally been doing. Well, what do I mean by that? We've helped of our yeah, 5 of our retained clients. 3 of them have hired salespeople, and the other 2 are just launching it. Outside salespeople, but they're actually hybrid. They're inside and outside. And we've designed a program that starts with their existing customer base. And I've asked the question. I said, okay, this is going to be proactive. When was the last time you reached out to all of these people,
Yep.
assured that you have the contact information of everybody inside that company that could possibly buy transportation? So proactive building out of the contacts, proactive contacts, okay? Instead of just waiting for them to call you by reservation, with our program, one of the things we do is we look at the same time last year and the next 3 months, and we say, you know something? Last year in September, you did 75,000 with them. We didn't see that this year. We're not seeing that. Or you know what? They did 80,000 with you last November. You better reach out to them and see if we're going to get that again. Proactivity to me is consistency of your campaigns. It's 2 or 3xing the strategies that you're using for both things, sales and marketing, but specifically marketing and promotion. And then the other thing to me is reactivity. This industry is built around waiting for the reservation to take place rather than using the data from past years to project, predict, and manage the sales that can take place. I mean, proactive, top 5 customers, one of them is a law firm. Geez, do you think they're the only law firm in Boston? Do you think they're the only law firm in LA? Chances are no. How about we proactively create a list of the top 20, right? So, I mean, it's funny. The industry to me it's interesting. It seems to me like it's in a period where it's its own worst enemy at this point.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right?
Some companies.
Yeah, but if you want the easiest example of being proactive, right? The person that's and we're in the driving industry, so I'll make it real easy. The person that is driving looking 2 to 3 car lengths ahead is a reactive driver. They're going to have to react to what happens in the environment when it happens in real time. Because if they don't, they crash. The proactive driver is driving the horizon. They know what's coming up ahead. They know what's further down the road. They know to get into a lane to position.
They're managing it.
They're managing it. Now,
they're monitoring the horizon and they're managing themselves.
Exactly, but they're positioning themselves before the situation happens. And by changing position before they reach the situation, a lot of times they've already taken action that prevents them from ever having to take a reaction. And I'll repeat that again.
It guarantees the result. It guarantees the result.
Well, not only does it guarantee the result, it changes the situation and the outcome. Because, for example, if you're driving 2 to 3 cars ahead and someone cuts you off, you've now got to worry about, can I brake in time? If you're not even in that lane and it happens in a completely different lane, you don't necessarily have to react to that because you weren't cut off, right? The situation never occurred warranting that. Now, you talked about the marketing. If you're looking at your marketing, I'll give you a great example. In my world, I know that around spring and fall, there's a big uptick in shows. And so I know that for us, we ramp up our marketing going into that. And then coming out of that, we know that we still keep marketing up. But guess what? I'm really worried about coming out of that. Now I'm really worried about delivering and trying to knock it out of the park for all of those new clients so that I can ride those cycles. I can't tell you how many times in business you see people that are just basically reacting. Hey, we have this great uptick in marketing. We're going to absolutely plow into it, but never taking the step back to look at it and say, hey, every single year for the past 4 years, this has been my best month. Maybe I should look at, how does it taper off? How does it build up? How do I prep for it? How do I possibly shift some of that over? That's kind of what the proactiveness becomes in every part of the business.
Right. And unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, every operator that's reached any level of success in the business pretty much has mastered getting a car from point A to point B, right?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But where I think there's a dearth, there is definitely there's always seeking the easy answer is, okay, who can I use for Google paid ads, or who's out there for digital marketing, instead of developing a business development plan that should be implemented like an 8-cylinder engine, right? Whereas, maybe one of those cylinders is Google ads in a certain space, et cetera. It's funny. I remember somebody saying to me last year, oh my God, they said this in January. Oh my God, New Year's was terrible for us. And there were no holiday parties. And I said, okay, so let's back up a step. First of all, you're in a winter climate. So guess what? If you had a shitty December and New Year's, you're going to have a tough time January, February. But anyway, or what did you do to promote the holiday party use? Well, really not anything. We just didn't get a lot of calls. Okay. Well, no offense. Shame on you. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Shame on you. If you're not starting way before, okay, in anything, we used to, when I was an operator, a lot of people who live in Florida go north for Thanksgiving. Okay. So we would start right before Halloween, saying, if you're planning your Thanksgiving flights, book your round trip now. Okay. The same thing with holiday parties. We used to do a specific email to all our corporate clients, and listen, Uber was still in business. I mean, they were in the beginning. People were enamored with them. And we would say, listen, you know what? If there's a holiday party, we're going to give you a special rate on SUVs or a special rate on group vehicles so that multiple couples can go in the same vehicle. And the same thing we would do for New Year's. We would advertise New Year's is an amateur hour. Leave your transportation to the professionals. In addition to that, the funny thing, and I'll tell you, this is a really good proactive story. We noticed that around Valentine's Day, we used to get a lot of calls from our professional sports players saying, hey, Ken, I want to take my wife out for Valentine's Day. Can I have a car? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And then they call back and geez, I can't get any decent restaurant reservations. So we used to, this is a really good tip and probably interesting, but we used to make reservations at the top 10 most romantic restaurants under the name Ambassador Limousine. We would say, listen,
so you had it ready to give out.
We've got a VIP client. He doesn't want to give his name. We want to secure this. Okay. Are you going to do this for us? And that was I learned that the first or second year because we always had the Yankees for an account, and then we had the Bucks for an account, and then we had the Rays. The guy that ran the clubhouse used to love us. Anyway, so when we did it for the VIPs, then the next year we sent it out to our entire database saying, we have secured reservations at these restaurants. First come, first serve. Don't miss out. But it's part of these packages. Okay. And we would go from the Phantom Rolls Royce down to a sedan. Phantom, Cadillac Escalade, Executive, and Standard Sedan. And I'm telling you, they absolutely, reservations are already taken place, and we have a 7, a 9, or an 8, right? What do you want? The Phantom sold out to the point where, I would go to the Rolls dealership and say, you got anything? Put a dealer plate on it, and they, I think one year we ended up doing it. But my whole point was we would start planning that in January.
But let's stop for a second, Ken, because you're nailing exactly what I talked about earlier. Because if you were just trying to get ahead and you're like, yeah, I booked these reservations, then I hocked them, right? You have something different here, and that you're being proactive because you're being very intentional about it. You're
Yeah.
building out a campaign. You're building out packages. You're building out a plan. It's not, yeah, we made a bunch of reservations so that we could, kick them
No.
over.
And
And
the Rolls
this
Royce
is,
package, had roses in it, and it had a bottle of champagne in the back.
there you
And that
go.
son of a bitch went for $19.95 that night. And I was like, I don't give a shit if it doesn't sell. It did. It really and we put the antique rolls on as a secondary package as well, right? And it really, but you are correct. And once we had it the first year, we rolled it out every year. The same with holiday lights, the same with board meetings. Okay. Every public company that has board meetings
Oh,
has them
yeah.
around the same time every year. Okay. And we were smart enough to know when we serviced a board meeting that they came to Tampa to play golf, we would make the phone call the next year and say, "Are you coming back?" No, we're not. This year we're going down to Miami. We can help you in Miami, but
Well,
we had to do that 90 to 120 days before by looking at the data that we already had.
but it's interesting, right? Because seasonality is such a great example. I can tell you one of the things, and you're going to laugh because you're the financial guy. One of the things that I screwed up my first probably 5-10 years having my own business was taxes, right? Speaking of something that's recurring and proactive, because I'd wait till the end of the damn year to figure out what I personally owed in taxes. The day I figured out how to actually actively start being proactive about my finances, changed everything for me owning a business, right? Because it's so funny. We talk about it, that safety, marketing, finance, like this is something that this mindset, even if it's not a seasonal thing, any part of this, I mean, being proactive applies in so many areas. Now, I think one of the things for me that I struggled with initially was identifying what areas I wasn't being proactive in. And I found this rule that I really liked, right? And that was that I had a 3-strike rule. Now, this 3-strike rule, if it was something really bad, would escalate. But if I ever had something that I reacted to 3 times and I didn't automate it, plan for it, be ready, and get ahead of it, then I knew I was screwing up as a business owner. Now, does that mean that and the reason there's that 3-strike rule is sometimes you get weird crap that you're just like, this is off the wall. I'm probably never
Sure,
going to deal with
sure,
again. So you want
sure.
to have some kind of filter, right? Now, in the safety world, it's kind of like, okay, if I get the 3 little things, I know I've got ahead of it. On the financial side, after about the second or third time that I got a big unexpected tax bill at the end of the year and I had to scramble to figure out how to pay it, even after, had a great year, spent too much of the money, don't have enough taxes, how many times are you really going to let yourself do that? But I think this really kind of highlights that in all of these areas, you have to have triggers that say, hey, I need to either automate, plan, or get ahead of and be ahead of this and be intentional to keep stuff from becoming, hey, I'm just a firefighter in my business.
And that's an extremely good term because most small business people are firefighters. Before we leave business development, sales and marketing, I want to tell you the number one tool you can use for sales and business development is an events calendar.
Yeah.
It's a calendar for the year. Okay. It's a calendar for the year. And then it is to look at the events that take place from a corporation perspective. Most corporations do planning sessions. Most corporations do employee engagement outings, or they have an employee annual event. Most corporations, the large ones, they all have a board meeting. Okay. Even some of them, we used to have advisory meetings at Ambassador that everybody in the company was invited to them, but we had a team. Anyway, so a calendar of events to plan around your sales and marketing. And the other piece of sales and marketing that I think that people get scared of is they think that to be a great salesperson, you have to be a great communicator. No, all you have to do is have consistency. Okay. You can go to Arthur Messina and Drew Messina and have them do an electronic brochure or electronic video that makes you look like the biggest company in the world, but you don't have to be the guy pitching it, right? So
Yep.
it's all about consistency. And to me, it's all about proactivity to me is increasing the amount of times the phone rings every single day. It starts with what your base data is. I was on with somebody yesterday, great kid from Montana, really like him, love the market. And he's gone from practically zero to $500,000, overnight.
Yeah.
And we work together on the financial foundation, and we'll get to proactivity in a minute. And I said, listen, the biggest problem you have right now is your chief cook and bottle washer, and you have to decide what is the most important things for you to focus on, and then start at 500K a year. You need to start offloading those so that during the prime sales times, you can be proactive. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're in the land of the high-end
Yeah.
fishing lodges. I used to go to them. My buddy Wade Boggs, when he was a client, Wade used to go out there. One day I was coming into Hubbard Lodge and Wade was leaving. I'm like, Jesus, what are the odds of this? Anyway, you're also in the land of ski season. You're also in the land of some of the most prestigious ranches in the country. You need to get out there proactively because nobody sells the business like you.
Yep.
So, to one of my favorite clients in the world who confessed to me the other day, probably wrongly, that he spends 15 hours a week doing billing during the day. I said, are you out of your mind? I said, you are one of the bigger companies in your market, and you, the owner, are sitting doing billing. First of all, you might have a trust issue. I said,
A little bit.
right. Why don't we start by you training somebody to do the vanilla ice cream billing,
Cool.
and then you can look over the global stuff and the high touch stuff because I get it. So proactivity is also about doing the right thing at the right times. All right. So final thing about proactivity that we'll talk about today is financial. So for every one of our retained clients, if you bought our course, one of the things we do is we teach you how to manage your primary metrics on a monthly basis. And then if something goes wrong with them and the primary metrics are not good, we teach you the secondary numbers to look at. So if your gross profit margins aren't that great, and we teach you, okay, let's look at your fuel, let's look at your fleet, let's look at your driver, something is off here.
Right.
In addition to that, we teach you from a liquidity perspective what your liquidity should be for the size of company you are. Their lending ratios. So to me, financial planning is tremendously overlooked because people say, well, I have an accountant. Okay, great. Do you look at the reports every single month? No, he just prepares my taxes. Okay, that's not financial planning. That's retroactive. This is what you owe. Do you know that 30% of small business owners have to either borrow a credit card? They have to borrow. I think it's 28% of small business owners have to borrow to pay their taxes. Did you know that? They have to either use their line or they have to use credit card, et cetera, because they haven't set aside the capital, right?
I've been in that boat, right? I mean, that was, and it's
so
funny
have I.
because
Okay.
that my first business, right? My first business, you don't think about how it works. You don't take the time to, again, you're not proactive. You don't get the financial education. You're trying to make the bills work.
You're working in the business to try to generate the revenue. You're not keeping score.
No.
So, one of the things that we teach people is, look, if you are on our financial program and you've got the monthly financial reporting and hopefully the KPI side, we want you to do proactive financial planning with an annual budget. And it starts with what you did last year. Okay. It starts with what were your metrics last year? What were good, bad? What are you going to improve? So budgeting is proactivity. In addition, it's to me, it's proactivity is planning for and calculating how much liquidity you have. Okay. So for everybody out there, look at how much cash that you have in the bank at the end of every month. And if it was not appreciably more than when you started, you have a profitability problem that can be fixed. But why should I worry about that? Well, first of all, if you want to buy any asset, the worst way to buy it is zero down, but you want to have enough liquidity to plan for your next vehicle. So how do you do that? You set aside capital, Plan for your down payment. Plan for your fleet insurance down payment. This, for some reason, has been the year of people wanting to sell because they can't manage the new fleet, their fleet insurance price increase, and they don't have the cash to do the down payment. True story. I had a guy, I don't do business with him, who called me, I think 3 years ago, to try to sell his business, and I said, look, we're not a good fit. He called me again to try to sell his business, and I said, okay, Lou, what is your reasoning? He said, Ken, I got to get out. I don't have the money to pay for my fleet insurance, and I already have a second mortgage on my house. And I said to him, not to rub salt in the wound, but 3 years ago, I said to you, you need to get your financial house in order, and we're not a good fit because, we charge for that. You either got to buy our course, you got to pay us to do it. So the lack of proactivity on the financial side of the world, financial things, to me, has another aspect to it. Number one, I don't think people like to talk about finances, and they're
No.
embarrassed about what they don't know. Number two, they think they can farm it out or outsource it. Let it be someone else's problem. And I just want to dispel that myth. Number one, most of the CPAs that we run into, with the exception of one out of 300 companies, the exception of one, this one woman in California, just happens to be in wine country. This fractional CPA took it upon herself to learn the metrics, the healthy metrics of the business, by going back and looking and saying, wait a minute, 4 years ago, our fuel was this. 5 years ago, our fleet insurance was that. And we had, okay. But she's the only CPA, and she has other clients, but this is the only one she had in this business. And I always say to people, your CPA's job is not to know the financial metrics of the transportation industry, okay? Their job is to tell you how much tax you owe, okay? If they're really good, they will start telling you tax planning. So let me give you the financial planning basics. Number one is to know how much cash you should have in the bank, cash liquidity. I'm going to give you one number. If you're $1 million operator, you should have no more than $300,000 in long-term debt on your fleet. You should have no debt on $1 million business, with the exception of the fleet assets. Second number, if you're $1 million company, you should have the equivalent of 3 months of your base expenses in liquid cash available, not a line of credit, liquid cash. So what does that mean? The G&A of a business, the overhead of $1 million business, is about $250,000 a year, right? Plus your fleet, all your fleet payments. So to keep the business open, you need to have 3 months of your overhead, okay? Because even if the drivers, are calling and saying there's no work, you don't have to pay them. If you lay them off, you still have to keep the business running. So 3 months of base expenses.
Real quick, before you go into what's covered, right? Because I know I can hear it already, right? I can hear the operator saying it. Ken, you want me to put all that money in there in cash, not making me any money, just sitting there? Like, shouldn't I invest it? Shouldn't I have it somewhere I can make money on that money? Cash? Are you nuts?
Good question. Good question. I'm going to give you the opposite. I'm dealing with an operator the other day who has several $1 million sitting in the bank. I'm like, dude, can we please put this into some short-term investment? Here's the key with cash liquidity. You got to be able to get to it in a reasonable time frame within an emergency. When you look back at the pandemic, the companies that didn't make it through the first 120 days and they had to liquidate fleet were cash poor. Okay. Yeah. And I can call some people out, but I won't, because they're dead soldiers and they're not in business anymore. But if you look at the first 120 days, there was a very prominent operator in Connecticut that went out of business because he owed another operator so much money. Okay. he basically had to make a deal with them to take over the business, which was dead. I mean, the business didn't return. I mean, maybe a third of it returned after the pandemic, but that was catastrophic. And the other thing I'm going to hear is, well, that's never going to happen again. Let me tell you something.
Oh, jeez.
And this is going to intersect with your world. Okay. You have a catastrophic accident. I don't care. I've never seen a business that didn't have a catastrophic accident where the results were consuming of the business. Business dipped after that. You had to put down money to pay to rebuild the vehicle. You had to buy, in certain cases, you had to hire a lawyer. In other cases, obviously, you had to replace the vehicle. Okay. But it's something about when the catastrophic accident happens. Okay. I mean, it in some cases, it literally can be the death knell of the business. But think of cash liquidity as it is literally like Popeye's spinach. Okay. If you're a weakling, you don't have any cash. If any blip blip comes up on the radar, you're not going to be able to survive it. The fleet insurance is the one that is interesting to me because, no offense, if you own a business and you can't come up with $50,000 in cash, okay, without a line of credit or putting a second mortgage on your house, what are you in business for?
Well,
right.
And there's more to it than that, right? Because we spent half a podcast talking about proactive. I am so tired, right? This happens to me all the time. Hey, I got my renewal coming up. How fast can we train my entire team on a year's worth of training I haven't done? Do you think the insurance company's stupid, right?
No,
One, if you do it, they're going to know. And two,
No.
you should have done that all year long. And then when it's time to do your renewal, you need to present yourself, right?
Yes.
You need to put your portfolio of, this is our safety portfolio. Here's our training. Here's our telematics. Here's how we're spending time with the drivers.
Here's our annual report. Here's our annual safety report. You know, we're blessed. Coming up in another podcast, we're going to have one of the brightest guys, most successful guys in the insurance industry. Tim Delaney from Lancer. And you know, Tim, one of the things that gets me about Tim is he's a gentleman. Okay. But I can tell you right now, if he was less of a gentleman, he would say flat out, we have been saying to you guys for years, you need to do this stuff. Okay. And now what's happened? All of the insurance industry forces, the cost of reinsurance, the commercial losses, the nuclear verdicts, they've all come home to roost. So if you listen,
it's a storm of all of them together.
Correct. So if you listen to the proactivity that they were preaching, you'd be in good shape. I know one large operator, it's a $90 million operator who got an insurance decrease. Do you know why? He blew away his insurance company with what you just talked about, his safety portfolio. Okay. He did a full-on presentation of how safe his business was coupled with the loss runs. It ended with, okay, yeah, here are my loss runs, but let me show you my program. So anyway, from a proactivity perspective on financials, you should be prepared to show a lender or to show a potential buyer or a seller that you are financially viable, either to borrow to buy a piece of equipment, or to borrow to buy a company, or you've got your financial stuff in order to sell. So another story, and I know we're running up on time. Guy calls me, love this guy. Guys in the southern city calls me, take his phone call if I was on Mars. He's like, Ken, I got a company I want to buy. I'm like, I'm thrilled to work with you. Okay. He said, but I'm going on a trip. I said, I got it. Don't worry about it. I'll handle it. So he gives me the buyer's information, and he connects us by email. He gives us the seller information. I connect by email, and the seller says, listen, I've got a business broker. Okay. That was 4 weeks ago. We still have not gotten any data. I've called the business broker. Okay. This is a guy that the seller is a guy that I admire, and he's been in business for 30 years. And he's decided to sell his business, and he's using a guy that's a part-time business broker who also sells real estate. And I said to the broker, I mean, didn't you prep this guy? Did you do evaluation? No. And I said to myself, Ken, you're working for the buyer. Just tell him what you need. I gave him a list of what I need. And he said, oh, this is very helpful. The broker said that to me. So proactivity on the finance side is totally having your house in order, having the capital set aside. Let's start with, did you end the month with more money than you began it after all your bills are paid? If the answer is no, you need to come visit Driving Transactions. If you don't have a proactive safety program and you're facing an insurance renewal, I don't care if you just renewed and you're not happy with the increase, that should tell you you need to talk to James so that next year get proactive now and be ready next year. Oh, so listen, this is an hour that's gone by real fast. I love the fact that we took the proactivity and we weaved it through those three things. We could spend so much more time on proactivity. And I appreciate you being here. I've really missed you. You've been on the road. I know I see you on Facebook at every single association meeting out there. I wish I was as young and aggressive as you. God love you.
I wish I was younger. I could be at more of them, but at a certain point.
Yeah, listen, you're all over the country. You're literally like there's two or three of you. So thank you very much for everybody for tuning in to another exciting episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast. If you've got any questions, email us. If you'd like any subject discussed, shoot us an email. And James, it's been a pleasure. I love it when a plan comes together and we can co-host.
It is always a pleasure. And if you guys haven't already, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know you're listening. Let us know, what do you want to hear us talk about? Who do you want to hear us talk to? And thank you again for listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast. Ken, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about PAX training and to contact James, go to paxtraining.com. And for more information about driving transactions and to contact Ken, go to drivingtransactions.com. We'll see you next time on the Ground Transportation Podcast.